And joining us once again as we continue our Ohio State Buckeyes road trip around the NFL, it is Ross Jackson. He is the host of Locked On Saints. You heard him recently, maybe saw his face on YouTube, on the Locked On Buckeyes YouTube page, as we recap Chris Olave being drafted by the Saints. But as we know, the Saints have numerous Buckeyes on their roster, and today we're going to talk about one of them that they drafted last year. Ross, welcome back.
Hey, glad to be back here with you, man. We made a joke last time when you came and saw me over on Locked On Saints about co-hosting shows together. It's happening whether we want to get it done or not, right? Like this pipeline is the pipeline no matter what.
You're exactly right. I think David will understand if at some point I make an appearance on your show for a week. David's like, what's going on? I'm like, just Ohio State time, man.
Yeah,
like Ohio State runs this thing. But the Bayou is fun. I love the Bayou. I love the vibe that's going down there in New Orleans. I want to visit New Orleans to begin with, but the football team, I've always had a secret love for them. And I did love the draft pick they made last season, picking Pete Werner. And he's a linebacker, a fun guy, a guy that was a staple, a big piece at Ohio State. And I wonder, what did we see from him last year that might make Buckeye fans excited for him and what he'll do in year 2 in New Orleans?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things in particular that I'll highlight. First of all, I mean, and I'm sure that everybody has heard this about Pete Werner before, even while he was at Ohio State, that he is one of those guys that's kind of a jack of all trades, master of none, in that the guy can do anything you want him to do on the field. You need him in run support, fine. You want him to blitz the passer, fine. You want him to cover a tight end, absolutely. So he goes out there every play and he ends up being a 3-down type of guy because you can put him in any role that you want to put him in. And so I think that that's something that works really well for the New Orleans Saints, who really like versatility and multiplicity on the defensive side. You see that in their secondary, but they also utilize that a lot in their second level as well, moving guys around and then shifting linebackers based on pass situation versus run situation, all of that. So the Saints love the versatility of a guy like Pete Werner. So that's one part. The other part of it is the IQ. I mean, this was a guy that was forced into effectively being the quarterback of the defense up against the Miami Dolphins on Monday Night Football when COVID hit, and due to health and safety protocols, the Saints were down like 22 starters or something like that. And so with all of that, Pete Werner had to kind of step up into the Demario Davis role and quarterback the defense, and he did a fantastic job with that. The New Orleans Saints love Pete Werner. They love what he brings to this team, both from the mental acuity side, but also his ability to make plays over on the defensive side in all levels of the game, being a 4-phase coverage type of guy. And those things in particular should excite you about Pete Werner at the next level.
Ross, quick glance at Pro Football Reference. I don't go very far before finding something that sticks out in my mind. He played 15 games last year, only started 8. Why was there a gap in between the games played and games started?
So this is something that the New Orleans Saints do quite a bit, right? Remember that a start means who's on the field the very first play, basically. And so with that being the case, there are going to be certain times where the Saints are going to try to match up linebackers and match up their defense to the opposing offense based upon what they think they're going to do early on in the game. And then they might sort of adjust after sort of diagnosing what the team is doing over the course of the first drive. So with Quan Alexander and Demario Davis being sort of the more dynamic players than dynamic pairing than Demario Davis and Pete Werner, especially as Pete Werner was learning the defense, there were a lot of times where they marched out Quan Alexander before they marched out Pete Werner. There were also games in which the Saints took their first snap on a 1st and 10 on the defensive side with 3 linebackers on the field, and then there were other times where they took it with only 2 linebackers on the field in a nickel package with a third DB or with a third cornerback. So for instance, going up against Seattle, first snap of that game, they probably came out in a 4-3 with 3 linebackers because that's going to be a run-heavy offensive attack. But going up against Tampa Bay, because they like to disguise against Tom Brady with their secondary, they came out in each of those games with only 2 linebackers on the field to start off the game. So that would impact those start versus games played numbers more than maybe, than it is anything about a decision being made based on his acuity or readiness to be out on the field.
Ross, you mentioned something very meticulous there, getting into the nitty-gritty details. Sometimes they come out in a 2 linebacker set. Sometimes they come out in a 3 linebacker set. Regardless of 2 or 3 linebackers that they utilize to start the game, is Pete Werner projected to be a starter for the Saints in this upcoming season?
In 2022, he absolutely is. I think that a 3 linebacker set now would be Demario Davis, Pete Werner, and then maybe it's got to be some competition now between Zach Bond, Caden Ellis, and then their rookie 5th round selection, DeMarco Jackson out of App State. So that would be their 3 linebacker set. But now the 2 linebacker set, which would have usually pushed Pete Werner off in certain situations. There were other situations where he was the 2nd linebacker, but now he will be that one of those 2 linebackers. Even if the Saints, I believe, re-sign Quan Alexander, who's currently still a free agent, I think that the pairing you're going to see the most on the defensive side when it comes to linebacker at the 2nd level for the Saints is going to be Demario Davis and Pete Werner in 2022. And that just comes with how quickly he developed and him getting that opportunity to show what he can do during that Miami Dolphins game as somebody that was able to come up and make plays in the backfield, make plays in the run game, make plays in the passing game, and quarterback the entire defense. I think that was a big time sort of coming out party for Pete Werner, the opportunity that he got in that game and the way that he was able to handle it. So yeah, I would expect him to be a projected starter, even if Quan Alexander does return to the team in 2022.
It's almost like Ross read my mind, because I was going to ask the why after he said he's going to start in 2 or 3 linebacker sets. Then he did a great job of explaining that. That's why I love Ross coming on the show. He answers the question and then explains it. So even the natural follow-up that a host is going to have, Ross throws it out the window because Ross is like, no, I got you, bro. I'm gonna carry this thing for you. Ross, though, final thoughts here about Pete Werner in 2022. I'm expecting him to stay healthy. I'm expecting him to start every single game, 2 linebacker set or 3 linebacker set. But what are your expectations for Pete Werner in 2022?
I think that's exactly it. I mean, he's a durable player. He's a reliable player, like we mentioned, to open up all of this. He's somebody that does everything well. He might not be the biggest playmaker in the world, but with a Saints secondary, you don't really look at that from the 2nd level. The Saints haven't been a team that has lived off of playmaking at the 2nd level. That's not been their identity on the defensive side. So he fits in so perfectly with what it is that the New Orleans Saints do and how they measure success, which is, can you come up and make these plays? Can you communicate? Can you execute on a down by down basis? And that's one of the things that's going to keep Pete Werner out on the field, is his ability to be able to execute. And just one example for you, a couple of years back, Quan Alexander was sort of in a 2-gap situation to where he could have either cut to the inside of an offensive lineman or wrapped around to the outside of an offensive lineman while trying to make a tackle on Miles Sanders, the Philadelphia Eagles running back. He made at the time, ill decision of taking the inside track, which gave Miles Sanders the sideline, which you never want to give the running back the sideline, right? You want to force him back into the congestion, force him back into the middle of the field. Pete Werner saw almost that exact same look going up against the Miami Dolphins, took the outside, forced the running back toward the inside, and was able to, other players were able to bring it into the play. But those types of decisions are the things that are measurable success within the New Orleans Saints defense, not interceptions, not pass breakups, not sacks, not those things. Did you make the right decision? And did your defense live to fight another down because of it? And Pete Werner seems to always make that right decision. And that's something the New Orleans Saints are going to love. And that's part of my expectation for him in 2022 for sure.
Ross, it's always fun when you're on the show. If you could let everyone know before you go where they can follow you on Twitter and some of the great things you're doing at Locked On Saints and also the Saints Wire as well.
Absolutely. So easiest place to follow me, of course, is going to be on Twitter at Ross Jackson Nola, Nola, because I love to rub it in where I'm from and what I do. And the Locked On Saints podcast, just like the Locked On Buckeyes podcast here, is every Monday through Friday, covering some of your favorite Buckeyes over with the New Orleans Saints. And we also have a bunch of write-ups and everything that we're getting done over at saintswire.usatoday.com as well, keeping you up to date with everything going on with those former Buckeyes and the New Orleans Saints as a whole.
It's always fun. Ross, this is not going to be the last time he's on the show. We got show with Michael Thomas coming up soon, and then some more, of course, that pipeline. Buckeyes that are now in New Orleans. We're going to keep this Buckeye road trip around the NFL. Keep moving along. Ross, thanks for coming back, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure, homie. Thanks for having me.